Well, welcome to another episode of Take Your Mountain. I'm your host, Jason Weimer, along with our co-host,
Mick Pickett.
Mick Pickett. One of the first things that came to mind you were saying is the difference between identity and a title or a role. Maybe we'll get into fivefold ministry a little bit. I didn't know what that was as a Baptist growing up, but why don't we start there with what's the difference between identity and a title or a role or a job or something like that?
Yeah, that's good. And just to touch on what we're talking about, Ephesians 4:11, we looked up a minute ago, talking about pastors, teachers, apostles, prophets, and evangelists.
Yeah,
I think. Even in the church settings, that it can be put on as your vocation. So if I'm saying, I'm a pastor and I'm employed by a church, or I'm an apostle and I plant churches and I do things, whatever. I want to take a step back from that and say that those are just meant to be identity markers in the way that God designed you, instead of this is now my title. Because depending on what circles you're in and the motives of your heart and things, like if I'm saying I'm a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or I'm saying I'm an apostle overall overseeing all these churches, my heart posture could be the same, which is perverted and wrong in both of those options.
Mm-hmm.
So my identity could be tied up in the business as a CEO, or my identity could be tied up in look at how far I've made it in the church. Look at all these people that are looking to me. Really the motives of your heart. So your identity can be wrapped up in anything.
How do you test that? We'll get into specifics of it, but how do you know? We talked a little bit before we started about if you own a business and your identity is wrapped up in your thing, you sell it. That's one of the ways to find out if you feel that uncomfortable. But assume you don't have that opportunity. How do you know if your identity is tied to something other than what God says or something?
That's an awesome question and a great conversation to start with God. I would say that's the first thing you should do, is bring that up to God and be an ongoing conversation with Him of, I give you permission to convict me if my identity is not rooted and grounded in you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what we want.
Is that back to the audience of one concept?
What do you mean?
Audience of one, we talked earlier today about if someone says something that might be off-putting to someone else because you're worried about what they might think, or if you're settled in who you are. Mm-hmm. And I use the audience of one. If I know my dad in heaven is happy, I want you to be happy, but that always comes first. And I really try to keep it in that order. But if you're coming from that posture, it's hard to rock somebody, So would that be, I can't remember where I was going with that, but that's what the audience of one means in my mind.
Yeah, and that's we've touched on it a lot in the other episodes and stuff, but it's probably just a bigger conversation. But if I was to speak to anybody in the world, I would say the number one thing in life is to figure out your identity in Christ, mm-hmm. and your identity as in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
From there, things come into focus in your life. So I think if you don't do that, there's always some measure of cloudiness, fogginess, unsure, or I'm looking to the pastor instead of straight to God. I'm looking to the CEO instead of straight to God. Even my spouse.
So you're talking about a direct connection.
Yes.
To the source of all.
Yeah.
The Most High God.
Yep.
God the Father.
What are you really like? And how did you design me? What did you think about? What do you think about me? Those types of questions.
Yeah. Knowing Him and knowing what He thinks about you.
Yep.
Specifically.
Yes. So if, in my experience, when you bring Him those questions, He might not give you the answer right in that moment.
Yeah.
But you're I want to know. I need to know. What do you really think about me?
Almost like clues on a journey, but
yeah,
you'll get affirmation, specific words. So
He will do it.
In your case, you shared earlier, what are some of this is fivefold. It's one of many ways that we learn our identity, but you have a couple names, right?
So but it started out with me deciding, God, I want to know you better. Jesus, I want to know you better. Yeah. I want to know you how you want to be known.
Yep.
Same with the Father and the Holy Spirit. and I want to know how you design me.
Yeah.
And what do you call me? What are your names for me? Like it says to make your relationship and intimacy with God the number one thing.
Yeah.
But there's no like instruction book on how to do that. So how else would you do it with any other relationship besides like, I'm going to make these types of questions the main thing, because it's kind of, I don't really know, but I'm going to keep after these questions as if this is the most important thing because the Bible says it is. And I'm just going to go after it. I'm going to bring it to God. I'm going to put it in his court and be like, I don't get it. I don't understand you. I want to know you better. I don't really understand how you're a provider. I don't really understand how you're father. I don't really understand how you're shepherd, Prince of Peace. I want those to connect in a deep way for me. So I'm not just reading in the book and be like, well, I guess I'm supposed to believe you're Prince of Peace. I haven't seen any peace in my life, super chaotic life or whatever.
Yeah.
Show me how you're the Prince of Peace. Like just make those types of questions your main thing. And just watch him. He's like, finally, people are asking the right questions. Oh, you say you want a relationship with me? Well, then start asking questions. And if I don't answer, are you going to stay? You're going to keep asking questions?
Yeah.
You're going to still lean in? You're going to press in for that being the most important thing? As that happens, he starts to answer the questions in very creative and unique ways specific to your story. And that's when it goes from just reading the verses to be, oh, wow, I'm actually kind of picking up some clues. I think God kind of made me as a pastor. And not necessarily a pastor to speak to people in the audience, but to come alongside people.
Yeah.
And that's been my story in the last like 7 years. So he gives me these little nuggets of my design over time in kind of like unique ways.
Yeah.
But I've got an identity board I've talked about before. It's like I'm on a journey of discovering who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also got this like ongoing notes of like, who are you, Jesus? I see what you are in the Bible. And those are like let's let the Bible be a conversation starter with God. It says you're the Prince of Peace. Okay, I'd like to experience you as the Prince of Peace. Mm-hmm. Connect that to my heart in some real life way so that I can actually live from that as a core belief instead of just like a belief, a white knuckle belief.
Yeah.
So it's led me on this awesome journey of discovery. So then I just have this board like over here that's an ongoing thing. Lord, reveal to me as you want to. Mm-hmm. And so things have come up over time where I had this awesome revelation of God's love, the Father's love. And he revealed to me, called me Wellspring, which I'd brought up before, and a wellspring of the Father's love. And so you get the name and then you kind of press into it. What do you mean by that? How does that work in regular life?
Yeah.
And he showed me that it's like I've experienced the Father's love, and now I'm bringing the Father's love and perspective to people. So when they're saying something negative about themselves, I'm able to like tap into the Father's perspective of that person and kind of like tennis forehand encouragement back to them.
Yeah.
So that's a wellspring of the Father's love. So I put Wellspring on the board. And another one that came up recently was Pathfinder. And essentially like thinking about like the headwaters being like the Father's love headwaters. I'm helping people coming alongside them in a pastoral sense again and building or helping them with tributaries into the headwaters so that they're accessing more of his love, because he's not withholding love from any of us, but we've got blockage based on trauma, pain, wrong thinking, whatever else. Imagine there's supposed to be 25 tributaries from the Father's love that are supposed to be being nutrients for your life.
Yeah.
But 22 of them are blocked up based on, so you're experiencing a little bit and you know it exists and you've had some cool moments, but I'm coming alongside people as a pathfinder to the Father's love to help them break through the different types of tributaries so they're experiencing more. Yeah. And then he also brought director of discipleship. So I'm like, I actually got that word in a church and my brain is like, well, I probably have to work at the church. Mm-hmm. And I'm literally like recoiled because it's like, I have no interest in doing that. But I've had to work through with the Lord. It's like, yeah, but would you? And I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to. I'm a business person out in the world, relationship person. I don't want to do that. But I got to the point of like, yes, I would do that, Lord. And then he's kind of revealing to me, like, you don't have to. You are that. Yeah. It's not you. It's the difference in America, that the nuance is I am a director of discipleship according to God. So it's not on my resume. It's not what a job.
It's a spiritual title.
You are that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not even a title. It's just like what you are.
You are that.
Yeah.
Really cool side thing that people can look into is the way
You're 6'4". Is that a title? No, it's like that's just what you are.
It's who you are. A really cool side note: apparently the Hebrew was so layered in the depth of their words.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when Adam apparently in the garden was naming people, he was naming their beauty and their function and like a whole bunch in the name, like Robin or whatever that name is for that bird. It's all of it baked within the name. So Jesus has these special words for us. So you're looking at Jesus too. It's like he's got Prince of Peace, Lord of Lords, like all these other like Captain of the Angel Armies, all these like identity names. So we're doing the same thing. So we've got all this stuff is starting to piece together this lens for me to interpret the world and how I'm designed. Doesn't matter what anything is going on in the world. I am these things. I am a wellspring of the Father's love. I am a pathfinder to help people into the Father's love. I am a director of discipleship, which is I'm connecting people to who would be good for you to know, who would be good for you to know, who would be good, and just like organizing in a way. And now he's shown me pastor in a sense, like I am pastoring for the last 7 years, but then this kind of a little bit of I would say whether it's an upgrade or a graduation or more responsibility. A few weeks ago, it's like he just made it really clear of it's almost like you're always training, obviously, but it's like I was training, and now he's like, you are a pastor. Mm. And it isn't so I can go tell everybody, hey, I'm a pastor now, according to God.
Yeah.
Or I need to like go get signed up at a church. He's like, you need to learn to live from a place that you are a pastor. Mm. And I've already seen it in the last few weeks of like, there's a little more responsibility with that. There's a little bit more ownership, a little bit more like, God, I wonder what you're going to do here. I'm a pastor. I'm living out my calling, living out who I am. So all of these things in one are making up the masterpiece that I am. Mm-hmm. I am a masterpiece. I'm going to say that. I'm not even going to even give any context, and you can get offended if you want to. I am one.
Yeah.
And each of us are.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't know that. So this discovery process is amazing. And while you're discovering it, you're drawing near to God. He's revealing things about himself. He's revealing things about you. And you're just playing a totally different game. The only game I'm playing, the main game I'm playing is that. Mm. And then all this other stuff flows out of that deepening intimacy into my marriage, into my job, into everything else. Is I can just, and it's freedom. Because I'm just being, like right now, I'm just being myself. I'm just like full of life.
Yeah.
I'm not putting on any sort of show or anything.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can see how passionate I am about this, but it's like, that is everything.
As you were talking about, it made me think of, this analogy has come to mind a couple of times, but like it's pick an oak tree, right? Oak tree at its biggest, fullest, mature. You probably picture that when you hear oak tree, but it starts off as an acorn, right? And not every acorn becomes an oak tree, but like early on in life, as we develop and mature, it's like everything that is the fullness of that tree starts off in the acorn. And when it's, using school terms, first grade, third grade, senior year, MD, I think about that like if part of our identity is like that. It's like you could call a spade in kindergarten, mm-hmm. first grade, second grade, third grade. You know the essence of who that person is and what they're becoming. That's a process. And so part of what I'm hearing is, as much as you spiritually could have identified the pastoral side of your identity maybe years ago, sometimes we literally don't even know terms, like we're just learning what we're learning. There's a certain amount of like a graduation sense. Mm-hmm. Is that what I'm hearing like in this last year or so?
Yeah, it reminded me of Paul, and I'm not comparing myself to Paul, but the story he says
you should.
Where you should. He has this Damascus moment, and then it just says he kind of goes away. I don't know if they list the years, maybe 12 years. Some people say 17 years.
After Damascus.
Years. Yeah. Because he was like a zealous person, like going after believers. But I think he was doing what he thought he was supposed to do.
Well, he was doing it to the best of his ability in a broken thought process. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was being an apostle still. Like he was doing
he was using every bit of his skill set.
All the zeal. Yeah.
Arguably in the wrong direction, but God
definitely
used
in the wrong direction.
God used that.
so then after that moment, he goes off. This is like before he's written any books. He's gone for like 7 to 17 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And so he's essentially, as far as we can imagine, he's like training. He's like learning. He's probably working through unforgiveness and bitterness and all. I just sent some people over here that killed this person. I was a part of Stephen getting stoned, the first martyr, like all this stuff. And then having to like filter his new relationship with revelation of Jesus through his past understanding of the Old Testament. And so it's like, there's time getting to know God. And then eventually he starts writing books and like going out and doing his ministry. But he's like somewhere for many, many, many years.
I didn't know that.
Before he goes on his travels.
It kind of makes sense.
Why wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So hidden years or whatever you want to call them. So just recently I felt the Lord saying, I didn't know I was doing that, but the last like 7 years I've been doing that.
Yeah.
And then just recently he's like, you are a pastor. So I'm like, what does that mean? So I'm going through all the avenues of like, do I need to crowdfund myself as a pastor? Do I need to go to a church and be a pastor? Am I just a pastor according to you? And like kind of just mentally going through the hoops of that. And what I boiled it down to so far is that he's just like, no, it's just like, I call you a pastor.
Yeah.
So live from a place of that. And so it's not arrogance. It's not anything other than confidence in who he says I am. That is the key. If I could say anything 1,000 times to people, confidence in who he says you are is the key to life. Look at Jesus. Confidence in who the Father said Jesus was is his superpower.
Well, that's part of what we're appealing here. It reminds me again of talking about the first, second, third heaven. Mm-hmm. First heaven being our flesh, third heaven being God's reality, and spiritual, things of the spirit. So things of the body, things of the soul, things of the spirit, first, second, third. What we're talking about is these things are only understood in spiritual terms. Mm-hmm. The things that we're talking about right here, your identity, that can only be known in the spirit.
Yeah.
What does it show on your business card in the natural? Probably nothing at this point, right?
Yeah, nothing to do with that
your
stuff.
Title, your job, what you do for money to pay the bills, all the other things. This is, I guess, related, but independent of.
Yeah, and I would say this probably happens in different cultures a lot differently than it does in America. Because like if you ask somebody, if you meet somebody with, and you're supposed to do small talk or talk to them, like within
you're
seconds.
You're going to give a first heaven response.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Not who you are. Yeah. I think that's just a mistake in our culture.
Yeah.
Because if somebody was maybe that's what I'll start doing is start asking, hey, who are you? And they say their name, like, yeah, but who are you?
Yeah.
And it's just like you step into like, what do you like, that's a deeper question. Like, what do you like? Like that would dive into like, who are you? Like, where do you come alive?
Yeah.
Instantly, that's even a better connection than asking, what do you do?
Right.
It's just, everything's supposed to flow out of who you are instead of identifiers of like, this is what I do with my time. Yeah. So it's a servant. Let's say a culture, we were talking a little bit about this sometimes in different churches, a servant culture, serve, seems good. Compared to an identity culture of like, become who you are, grow in your intimacy with the Lord, and then watch servanthood flow out of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. Once you know who you are and what you're uniquely equipped to do, then it's natural how you apply it.
So any church I'm in right now, I'm looking for people. I'm like, Lord, stir me up if there's somebody I should come alongside and help and be who I am around them. I would love to partner with you, Lord, and anybody that's a yes for me in this season. There's no like, oh crap, I got to volunteer for another one-on-one with people. I'm like, Lord, show me if there's somebody. Oh, there wasn't anybody this week. All right.
Yeah.
Like you have internal firepower and extra because it's your design.
Yep. So
there's more purpose, there's more nutrients, there's more everything in that lane.
Yeah. Where
it's like, I don't feel like I could ever burn out.
Totally. Well, maybe we should identify real quick for the benefit of the audience, the fivefold ministry. So going off memory, apostle, prophet, pastor, teacher, evangelist. I think you got him. Good there. One of the ladies I talked to has a way to do it on her hand that makes sense to her. I can keep 5 straight in my head.
That's good.
But maybe just real quick, 2 or 3 seconds each. Like, how would you define the fivefold, each of the fivefold?
Okay, so I'll do it for me. We'll see if you have any differences. But pastor, for myself, I would say is somebody that's like a shepherd that's coming alongside people and helping them into where God is leading them.
Yeah.
So you're essentially walking alongside.
Yeah.
So I'm not in front. I'm walking alongside and trying to connect you with the source. So I'm trying to get you to get you to hear from God yourself.
Yep.
And fall more in love with God, so that it becomes your main thing in your life.
Yeah.
I think that's what a pastor is supposed to be doing.
I think of the shepherd analogy.
Yeah.
And I used to think sheep was like a derogatory term. Like, oh, sheep, don't call me a freaking sheep. But no, sheep really is, you're just one of the group.
Yeah.
And a shepherd's job is to keep you from getting killed. And most of the time, though, it's just like meeting your practical needs, is physically present in and out of your life as needed. The 99, right? So it's usually one to many model. Like you can't be there every minute of every day with you, but it's that pastoral. And in the modern church context, probably speaks on Sunday, but that's actually probably the least of the things, like it's more the relational day to day, whether you have weddings, all that kind of traditionals, weddings and funerals, and just like, I think of more like emotional support, but not like not a therapist.
Yeah. I think when you talk about vocation, you're almost like, things get convoluted, because if a pastor was doing a job according to me, they'd be walking alongside people 8 hours a day if there was just something to do. But a pastor gets thrown all these other like administration jobs that are, if you're like employed,
right,
that have nothing to do with your identity, but
No.
you're clumped into pastoring. That's just maybe a miss or a breakdown or not enough resources or whatever.
Yeah.
But a pastor, I want to walk alongside people as the main thing. So it's like, there's a reason he didn't say one of the 999.
Yeah.
Because that's too many.
Too many. Yeah.
A lot of people.
1 to 100 is probably a reasonable ratio.
For a pastor, it is. For me, I am built with a different capacity for people, because that's part of my design.
Yeah.
So 4 to 7 friends, 5 to 12 friends, people say whatever that is. I have way more than that. And that's not because I'm special. It's because I'm designed to care for people in that capacity.
Yeah.
So maybe it is 100 people that I feel like I could reach out to.
Yep.
And you're dialed in enough that you know when somebody's hurt. So that's the thing. One of them wandered off. I'm paying enough attention to those 100.
Yep.
I'm in community, whether it's community or not, it's touch points. Now with texting or whatever, it's nice.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm kind of aware if they're not
doing it right.
If I'm checking in randomly or letting the Spirit lead and checking in.
Yeah. So
if somebody's hurting or in pain, I notice.
Yep. And then we're distinguishing in modern day church, I was just saying, every male that works at a church has the title pastor on their business card. It's like executive pastor, campus pastor, but that may or may not be aligned with their spiritual, one of the fivefold ministry, right?
Yeah.
All right. So moving on. What else? What are some of the other ones?
So apostle.
Yeah. Keep going.
I would say the apostle is like probably the largest reach when it comes to like amount of people. I would see an apostle as building, the way I best heard it described as Paul, you're like building a platform for others to build off of. So like Jesus being the main.
Where'd you hear that, by the way?
I can't remember.
I mean,
but I just kind of, I don't know.
It resonates as true with me. I've never heard it said that way, but that's.
Yeah. So I can't remember. But Jesus being obviously the main cornerstone between you and your walk. But then an apostle is building a large. So these are the people that are, building big churches, or probably building big companies, are apostles without even knowing that they are.
Right.
They just have the organizational mind to build out the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that others can find freedom and build off of that foundation that they're building.
Yeah.
Paul mentions it. He says, I wanted to do it. I didn't want anybody else to build off of my stuff. He's saying that like in one of the verses, he's saying, I wanted to go to these different countries in Asia or wherever else because I wanted people to build off of my foundation. So that's probably where I got it from.
Okay.
So he's doing that. He's purposely going that going there to build a foundation. He wants, because he knows in his mind, he's confident in the truth that's flowing within him.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't want him to build off of any, Greek gods, whatever else is going on. I want them to hear it from me directly.
From the rock.
So his foundation. So then apostles, larger reach. I think that's a big miss. And something I'm just kind of learning. We talked about before. It's like you see a pastor of a mega church, but they aren't in one-on-one communication. They don't know if somebody's hurt, I was
going to say, yeah, by your definition, and I think it's true. If you're building something, your job is not to be in relationship with all the people that come to support the platform.
Yeah.
You literally can't be, depending on how big the reach is.
So you're an apostle.
And so you have to, in the modern church, you got somebody building the thing, not even an executive pastor. Executive pastor is more like the COO, chief operating officer, making it run smoothly. You're casting vision and you're taking territory and taking big risks and backing it up. But then you're going to need an army of actual pastors behind you to meet the needs of all the people involved.
Yeah. And so they talk about, in the other part of the Bible, they talk about the gifts of the Spirit, and they talk about even the gifts of helps, or, there's administration type of stuff where it's like, you need to find the people in their identities and learn how to get people working in their identities within the church.
Yeah.
So that you don't have the pastors doing the admin work. Yeah. And you don't have the apostles trying to like feel bad because they don't have the bandwidth to do the pastor work.
Yeah.
And there's all these like disconnects. You're just jumbled in there because you love the Lord and you want to live your life that way.
Yeah.
It's not organized enough to be efficient and scalable.
Yeah.
Because people are burning out because they're not operating their identity most of the time.
We'll get to the rest of the fivefold, but that does remind me of Take Your Mountain. Just my whole approach to my spirituality post-college was like, who the stink am I? I know all the generalities. You become a husband and all. I get that. But who am I specifically? What's your unique fingerprint? Mm-hmm. And there's so many different ways to back in. The fivefold ministry is just one of many ways to look at the mosaic,
piece of the
another
mosaic.
Piece of the masterpiece.
Yes.
Whether it's a personality inventory, you name it. I did anything, and it was kind of like you look at a thing long enough, and you're like, "What is it?" And you look at it from this angle, and you start to get this information.
Yeah.
And then you can start to say, "Okay, that's speaking to the uniqueness of what this masterpiece is and what it's uniquely created to do." Because ultimately, that's what I was trying to do, is to back into, what do I do? I mean, I know how I could make money like this, or this, but that's really good. This identity thing. All right, now
I think that's whether it's just our structures where it's easy to clump them in of like acting as if pastor is a greater word than wellspring. Mm-hmm. It's not. Yeah. It's just another part of the thing for me.
Yeah.
And you should each be on your own journey with God on who you are.
Yeah.
And then there'll be overlap to the different fivefold ministry. We talked about any of us can do all five in certain ways.
Yeah.
But we're going to
function, but you'll have a primary.
We'll probably have one that we are more designed.
Primary and secondary.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what else is next? Apostle, pastor, teacher, prophet, evangelist. What are those?
So teacher would be pretty self-explanatory.
They're there to learn stuff, coalesce it down into bite size. That's when you think of a modern mega church with the online service, where that's usually what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Teaching. And that's a very small world. Teaching is for everything. Teaching can be about the deep state, for instance, or stuff that actually matters.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like the apostle. So I think of Pastor Peter from Substance, because he's a wonderful teacher.
Yeah.
And so I love his teaching. So he's an apostle, in a way, visionary, and a teacher. Yeah. But it's like for pastoring, it's like you just there's so many people in the church. It's like you don't have enough bandwidth to walk side by side and pastor each individual person.
Yeah.
So just recognize. I think just being okay with recognizing these are
a good
my
apostle
giftings.
or a good builder would acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Create the rules. A little bit of EOS. What are those seats you need on the bus?
Yeah.
And paid or not paid.
Yeah.
Right. That's also when everything that you've said so far. What do you get paid for out of that identity?
None.
None.
Yeah.
So your vocation, like what you do for work, and your identity are not mutually exclusive.
I would say as your identity comes into form, like it has been for me through these conversations with God and experience with God, your identity becomes like a compass for decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 1,000 jobs to choose from, as your identity comes into focus, the amount of jobs that would fit your identity gets more and more clear.
Yeah.
So as a realtor, I'm coming alongside people, helping them into their next thing in life. It's like it lines up great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So
that's part of what I wanted to get at, because in my case, I felt like I wouldn't have put it in these terms, but my spiritual identity and my vocation, I sought early to align those so that, like, I wouldn't say they're one and the same, but they are independent of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they play out like, okay, so keep going there.
Just imagine Paul he's a tent maker. People always talk about that. What if he just always was talking about tent making? What do you do? I'm a tent maker.
Yeah.
And that's just was his main thing that he talked about with people.
Yeah.
And then like, that's what America does. They literally put the emphasis all on being a tent maker.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff is like secondary,
sure, which
is just wrong. The other one, so prophet.
Yep.
So prophecy, there's all sorts of verses about how we can all learn to prophesy. Essentially, you're hearing from God and then telling other people. Simple.
Yeah.
So for me, as a pastor, it feels good to say, as a pastor according to God, exhortation is a spiritual gift of mine, which is encouragement.
Yeah.
And then connected with the Father's heart and his perspective, it's like, it feels like this superpower within me that I'm able to, people can say whatever they want to me, and I'm able to, like, it filters through my relationship with God, and I'm able to, like, bring some sort of, like, genuine encouragement. It helps that I start to cry a lot because of it, because I'm, like, feeling the reality of it. I had this happen just yesterday at church where it was in the middle of worship, and I've never done this before, but I saw some older guy worshiping by himself, and I just got really struck with an emotion. And I was like, all right, Lord, what are we doing with this? And what do you want me to know about this guy? And I just had this flashback of a word that my wife and I had gotten from somebody a while ago, which was like, there's a purity of heart. There's such a purity of heart within you too. And so I knew that there was some sort of purity of heart with this guy. And then I was like, all right, Lord, what do you want me to do with that? And eventually it was like, go tell him. So it was in the middle of worship, and I was like, all right, where's my moment? And I like felt the green light at some point, and like snuck around and went and sat by him. He had his eyes closed, and I just like put my hand on his shoulder, and he came out of it. And I was like, hey, my name's Mick. What's your name? And he told me his name. And I was like, I just noticed you over there. And I felt like I was like, God wanted to tell you that you have a pure heart. Like, he thinks that you have a pure heart. And it just rocked him. And I was like, all right, see ya. But it's like, how awesome. Like, that's me in my identity. Years ago, I would have been so terrified to do something like that. And now I was like, oh my gosh, like how just adding, like hearing value, adding value.
Wow.
And it's like, there's no, like, am I getting paid? Yes. Like,
spiritual payment. Yeah.
Being myself and exhortation. So
that's good.
So the prophetic, that's essentially an act of the prophetic where I was hearing from God about this guy having a pure heart.
Yeah.
I'm telling him.
Yeah.
In the lesser
third heaven reality.
Yeah.
Sensing it, hearing it. You can hear it, you can smell it, you can feel it. There's any number of ways to describe the spirit. It's like the window.
Yeah.
Can't grab it.
Yeah.
But it's sensed and felt and real, and then you're the one in some way, shape, or form, turn around and communicating that, effectively speaking the word of God.
Yeah. So that's where I would not put myself in like the office of the prophet of where I feel like I'm in the office of the pastor now.
Yeah.
But you still prophesy. We can all prophesy.
Right.
We can all.
Access.
I just prophesied to that guy.
Right.
That is. I want to let everybody know that we can all work on that. We can hear from God. If you don't know how to hear from God, make it your main thing.
Yeah.
And learn how to hear from God. He'll invite you into risk taking like that, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And then people if people are in this process of discovering that they're a prophet, you'll probably start to be having like, more dreams or more visions or more like really profound things. And then you're kind of like working towards testing them out. What does this mean? This seems big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to evangelists last, but that reminds me, I have a new definition of faith.
Okay.
So faith, you normally think is just like, just blindly believe. I don't think that's at all what we're called to do. I believe faith is simply believing enough in the spirit reality of things long enough to test it.
To take action.
Faith is literally just guessing enough or trying something long enough to see, is there something to it? And then there's faith loops. It's not being an idiot. It's part of what I'm saying.
Right.
It's just a different way to think about it than faith. Like, oh, you got to have big faith. It's like, yeah, big faith is built up slowly over time. If spiritual reality, the third heaven reality, is the reality, and everything else flows from that, okay, well, maybe test it out. So give it a chance long enough to test it. And I think if you do enough, like, there's all kinds of ways to misinterpret. Oh, God didn't give me exactly what I wanted right away, so therefore he doesn't exist. That's probably a false assumption. But yeah, just the spirit reality is more real than this reality. Test it, though.
Yeah.
Test it with a license plate. Test it with you don't have to take a crazy test. It might feel super uncomfortable. Take this much faith. And then you might you might get an answer. Oh, well, what if that worked? Well, and then before you know it, you're full on.
That's how something can become a core belief. Like, have you seen that movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like there's a core belief, and that Morgan Schneider from Becoming a King says, or maybe it was Dallas Willard before him, that your behavior flows out of your core beliefs 100% of the time.
Sure.
So we're reading these Bible verses, and they're like, well, I believe it, but I don't believe it enough to take action and test it.
You heard it.
I heard it. I'm like going to believe it.
Intellectually open to it.
Yeah.
Maybe. But until you know it, it's not.
So that's a great teaching lesson, is just like, grab these verses that jump out to you. I want to believe it. I haven't seen this in real life. And go to God and be like, how does this become a core belief?
Yeah.
And that'll be a process of risk-taking and watching him show up. And that's where the faith loops come.
Yeah, that's good. All right, evangelist, last one.
So evangelist is cool because as a pastor, I don't feel like an evangelist. There's a lot of freedom in this identity work because it breaks off some of this like stigma or guilt.
Pressure. Yeah.
Do this stuff
To
that
be
we tell you to
something
do.
You're not. Yes.
So I wanted to like go out and evangelize in my something about me wants to, but it isn't like the lane that a ton of good fruit is coming out of, like it is with pastoring. Yeah. So I need to be able to do evangelism and not afraid of it. So I still need to seek the Lord and be like, I don't want to be afraid to talk to the person at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So if I need to man up and go and do that, I want to be able to do that, so that at any random moment he could be like that person. And I won't have any like hesitation. Yeah.
And you don't have to be Billy Graham, but when you see a Billy Graham, and just the words that flow out of their mouth, you're just like, wow. Yeah. It doesn't have to be on that scale, but when you're in your office, in your identity, it coming from a place of nature.
It's evident.
It's in you, and you're kind of just, maybe you've never sung before, but like you kind of have a good voice, and you're learning to step into it. Like, oh man, other people acknowledge. Yeah. Gee, it's kind of pleasant to listen to you speak.
One really cool one, which I don't know if this messes with some people or not, but like Russell Brand. Yeah. Who's the actor. Yeah. He's an evangelist.
Absolutely.
And that's
50
amazing.
50 million followers or whatever he has.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, that's a great example of someone who's an evangelist. And he was, so
you other still thing are.
With offices, you have them, you're gifted them, regardless of which kingdom you serve.
Yeah. Gifts are irrevocable.
They're irrevocable. He gives them, and he lets us decide how we're going to use them. In the case of Russell, he was using them to build up Russell for a lot of years, and he had a lot of scar tissue to show for it.
And there's process. He gets on social media saying that he's a Christian now and all this stuff. Yeah. People want to judge him and say, well, you're not this. Your theology is wrong here. It's like, shut up. This dude is just, he's in process openly. Like, how cool.
He's so, wise though. He's mature in weird ways that I
Yeah.
wouldn't expect.
He's a gifted orator. Like that's just the way it is. And
on the water off the duck's back,
Yeah.
like you were saying, like, "No, I'm just going to, in front of 50 million people, I'm
Yeah.
fine following this wherever God takes me." Like, to
yeah.
do that process and for that big of a light on you.
There's another cool ones too. It's just cool to think through identity is like, because that helps you look for the gold in people.
Yeah.
Because if he designed you a certain way, there is no changing that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your behavior does.
Yeah.
Because your identity is your identity. He
Yeah.
designed you a certain way. That's it, period.
Yeah.
So even somebody like Kanye West.
I was going to say Kanye would
Really
be the
interesting.
other. Like, that came to mind as you were saying.
And it's interesting for him because there's actually like some potentially like a prophetic person in Kanye, which is super interesting. But it's been super twisted, super weird, super all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
But there's like some sort of connection that he has with a higher power.
Yeah.
Yet it's misplaced.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's super cool nowadays that more famous people are talking about spiritual things.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't it make sense that all these actresses or actors and stuff that have so much pull, they walk into a room and they just have like command in some way.
Yeah.
Whether they're believers or not, they just, whether it's the way that they look or the way that they carry themselves or something, but they're all these like beautiful masterpieces according to the kingdom of God. They've just been like, the world has said, oh, you're good at this, go do this.
Yeah.
And they've just misplaced their design. So it's going to be fun to see even like football players and actors and actresses come into the kingdom of God.
I heard it said all leadership is spiritual.
Interesting.
When you get into the highest level, if CEOs, past, you name it, priests, at the highest levels, everyone's seeking the Spirit. And it's either they're pulling from one or the other. And it's pretty obvious if you know what to look for. But the masses are the ones that get to be agnostic or whatever. That's like a privilege. Oh, I don't have to believe. When you get the highest levels of leadership, you're trusting in something other than yourself because you know you end and something else is there. And in many cases, like negative examples in Hollywood, like literal contracts with Satan for their soul. Like all the jokes, blood covenants and all this.
Crazy.
And the same's obviously true on the other side. And the kingdom's coming into greater power right now in the season because of the fruit of all that nastiness and garbage.
So yeah, just to tie a bow on it, talk to God about it. How did you make me? And that part of that will be the fivefold ministry. Also the gifts of the Spirit, if you want to look those up. There's designs in you that you're designed to operate in. Mm-hmm. The fruit of that is internal confidence that God is real and that he's paying attention to you and that he made you specifically and that he loves you like crazy and that he's like amazing. That's the fruit of it. Mm-hmm. And as that fruit increases, it overflows into the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. So it's actually supposed to be, it doesn't matter if you guys think I'm a pastor at all. I am.
It's more about, not in a selfish way, it's about you.
Yeah.
It's about you and your settledness.
Yeah.
And who you are.
Internal resolve.
And anyone that needs a house or whatever doesn't need to know that at all. But if you ask them afterwards how they feel, they're probably going to feel a little pastored, if not a lot of pastored,
And now, since I've acknowledged it, I go into my real estate transactions totally different.
Like you're there to facilitate a transaction, but
I'm not.
You're actually using that. You're using that as a reason to.
I'm there to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff, like that's where the flip has been mentally, where it's like, I am there to help these people however God has for me to help them.
Yeah.
And that might be take a risk and pray with a client.
Yeah.
And so because the Lord has eliminated it.
The transactions in and through and all around all that.
Yeah.
But you don't need it. If it happens, it happens.
I want it to happen.
Right.
And, and that's where it becomes an idol sometimes, where it's like,
yeah.
Oh, I want this I care too much about this transaction. I won't take a risk and pray with this person because they might.
Yeah. It's learning to live
me.
in the freedom of the calling.
Yeah.
And wherever the business leads, the business leads.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that when you do it well, pure-hearted, the business is not a problem.
Because the kingdom of God is one of the pillars of it is excellence.
Yeah.
So it's like you actually become a better version of that person at the job.
Imagine spiritually, you show up to average realtor's house or whatever. average person versus someone that's coming truly to serve you at a deep level, you pick up on that really fast.
People can see through it.
Really fast.
My first 5 years as a realtor, I was doing what they taught me. Transactional relationships. I'll do this for you. You do this for me.
This is giving me a business. This is how business ideas work for me. But that's an entire opportunity to create a realtor shop or whatever, just around the heart and spirit of actually teaching sales like that.
It's a good idea.
The whole.
I would say it's an identity game.
Yeah.
Because if you don't go and get your validation and affirmation from the Father, you are always seeking it from other people and from other things.
Yeah.
And from the paycheck and whatever else.
Yeah.
So it's if you don't lock that in first, how can you be free of the sale?
Yeah.
So it is
the sale when you need the sale.
I need the sale. Like our money is actually kind of tight right now. And it's like, there's a deal. It's like, well, would I still take any risk the Lord invites me into at the cost of this? Yeah. Will he provide still? Yeah. So it's cool to work through the mental hoops of giving him a chance to show up.
There's usually pitch points, testing points, and then the outpouring.
But as you see, like this identity game, if you're playing that game, it's the main game. Yeah. All the other stuff is secondary games. And so it has, like, they get filtered through. Yeah. Of, like, I'm at this podcast. How am I being myself here? I'm at a real estate meeting. How am I being myself here? It flows into everything else.
That's so good. Well, good. We covered fivefold, explored a little bit. Vocation, non-vocation identity, spiritual identity, business card identity. Is there anything else that you think would be good for us to dive into?
You could share which one you think you are.
Yeah. Again, I had no idea what the fivefold ministry was. I always liked the idea of fixing things. Like, I have a knack for seeing a problem or noticing something that's different enough to be a unique competitive advantage. Like just what you were saying, like that's a unique competitive advantage. You could build an entire, not just any business actually, but specifically a realtor shop. I always like the idea of fixing things. So the world's terms, entrepreneur, because sustainability was always a big piece of it. It's like, I don't want to just fix things. I have to go around and raise money all the time. I want to have a good idea or two or three or whatever. And that's it. That's all you need. So I came from, this worked on my theology actually a little bit, because the term saint or any kind of positive association with a believer, I didn't fully have in my thought process. It's like saint, like you and I, saints? No, that's like St. Augustine, Saint this and that. Like, hold on. No. You've been redeemed fully by Jesus. Like fully. And in the verse that says you can do the things I did and then some. It's like, oh. So I was part of stepping into my identity. It was like, I heard the term apostle. I was reading a book and, people were kind of like apostle this or that. And I was like, what is that? For one, what are they even claiming? I haven't heard this term before, like modern. And then I got to thinking like what it does, building, creating platforms. I'm like, I don't know. I think that resonates with me. Mm-hmm. That was too early for me to even say that's what I am. It's like, I don't know. That resonates with me. Because it seemed like too much of a jump. But it was through the saint stuff that I was talking about earlier that I felt like, oh, it affirmed my, I don't know, self-esteem or whatever you want to say. It's like sometimes I've learned this too with the kingdom. Sometimes what sounds too good to be true is. Often, it's not the only way to look at something, but often if it sounds too good to be true, that's often exactly how it is. Especially if it's like just wholesome, good to be. Like, could life really be like that? Yeah. Could my relationship really be fixed? Yeah. So it was that kind of process. But in my case, my ability to make money was always tied to how I earn revenue was from building stuff. Mm-hmm. But whether it's Warren Buffett or different people, like the idea of doing something that you would do for free has always like resonated with me. But anytime you can get paid to do it is generally a good thing, but maybe not. Like in your case, like if you're able to fully exercise being a pastor the way you feel called to and be a realtor, that actually frees you up in many ways compared to your traditional pastor who has to, if you make more than $67,500 a year, now you're, people are scrutinizing what kind of car you drive and all this stuff. But so apostle would be that type of identity. I love teaching though. That's my secondary one. Is like in my pursuit of figuring out how things work, you end up learning a thing or two and you're like, dang, that's how it works. That's powerful to me. Therefore, I'd love somebody else to benefit from this information because it takes a lot of energy to like figure stuff out sometimes, especially when you recognize the two kingdoms. I just kind of boil it down. There's strategic areas on earth, and both kingdoms are after them. They're strategic to both sides. And we've actually been in a season, I believe, where the kingdom of darkness has had more influence on earth. And so certain information has been intentionally, the more I learn about it, the more I realize it's on purpose. It's like, how does money work? Oh, I don't know. Man, I learned some things about how money works. That was kind of hard. Why was that so stinking hard? Oh, if you realize it's strategic, why don't we teach about money in high school? Is there any reason we can't teach about money in high school? Well, you could give reasons, but there's no reason the only reason you wouldn't teach about money is if you want people to learn about money. Go look at the slave trade. What did they do intentionally to keep slaves? Well, they taught them how to work and they didn't teach them much else, right? So it's not even that much of a stretch to think about that. So anyway, when it comes to teaching, like when you learn stuff, it's powerful stuff and you just want people to know about it. But in my case, it's always in the context of building. Like, what's the outcome? What's the goal? What's the ground we're trying to take? And even with the podcast, it's like the more we can, these strategic areas are out there, they exist, and I believe we're all called to serve on one of those fronts, whether it's at the front, being a leader, or supporting. I mean, that's really, you either are a leader or you're supporting one. But the more you know about yourself and where you fit into the mosaic, the happier and more joyful you are. There's times of firing and training and purifying, which is always challenging. But it's also, even in seasons where I've felt like that when you're really on purpose, you're kind of like licked and beat up and also happy at the same time, if that makes sense. It's like 2 days or something for football, or like, you're kind of whipped by it, but you're also like wanting to get better.
I'm on the right track.
Yeah. You want to pay the price ultimately for whatever it costs to do the thing that you're created to do.
That's good. Yeah. And this is the last thing, a great conversation with the Lord as you're in this process is to ask him, give him permission to purify your motives and to convict you of anything, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
Because the enemy and society will try to put more into those names than God is really putting into them.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I was to start calling you Apostle Jason Weimer, everywhere I went, that's going to cause people to experience that moment differently.
Yeah.
So there's a walk with God about that. Even like the ones that are more flashy, like I'm evangelist this, or I'm the prophet this. It's like, Lord, you need to bring that stuff to the Lord and be like, how do you want this to go? I only want to be known in the world how you want me to be known.
Yeah.
These aren't labels.
Yeah.
These are who you are.
Yeah.
So I don't need to go tell everybody I'm a pastor.
I've always been a big proponent of the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah.
I'd rather show people and tell them.
Yeah. And they could say how many times people have been like, hey, you're like a pastor. When are you going to be a pastor? When are you going to be a pastor?
Yeah. But
nobody has said to me like, why you're going to be an evangelist? You're an evangelist.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So walk with God on that, because
Yep.
just like your identity can get wrapped up in being an apostle, it can be wrapped up in
Well, at the
your
end of the
standing
day,
at your job or whatever.
how I try to think about it is it all comes back to service. It's like if your motive is to serve, that label may or may not serve the situation.
Yeah.
So if that's your motive, go low to go high. If sometimes it's clarifying. Like there's times when I took over our business and I was the president, and I was like, I don't know why I'm the president, but and there's people I wouldn't tell them I was the president. I'm like, I'm here to help. But then there's one time in particular where I was serving a customer, and later on he's like, you own the company? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, might have been nice to know, just descriptively. I still think that played really well to the situation, because I was just like, hey, whatever you need. But yeah, if you have service at the heart of the thought process, then that helps purify the motive. It's like, does this help me accomplish the interaction? Am I a better pastor by this person knowing I'm a pastor, or is it better to show up as a realtor and they're like, hey, you're just another guy, and you're like, yep, and I'm here to be a pastor.
Yeah. So I want to say one more thing. I was talking to these guys, the Herringshaw group. I don't know if you know them, but Matt Herringshaw is a friend, and they have this cool headwaters talk where it's like you're going up you're going from wherever you're at to the headwaters. Let's call the headwaters intimacy with God, the Father's love, total connection, Jesus's style, like full on connection with God. We're trying to grow into that, and service is like not quite there. So it's like I think a lot of people get to service, and then they're like, all right, I know I got to serve. I'm going to serve, and you haven't connected to the source enough yet.
Mm-hmm.
So your service eventually burns you out.
Yeah, sure.
So if you can continue, so I just want to caution people and just invite them into where you get the motivation and the love and the firepower to serve really well.
Yeah.
Is by getting into deeper connection with God, because then you start to actually receive more of his love, and the more love you receive of his, you want to give it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's so outrageous.
Yeah.
That's where at least in my life, that's where the fuel to want to serve has come from. It's not because I'm like, I know I got to serve and I got to get out there and serve because that's what everyone says. I've experienced so much love that I just cannot wait.
My burden is easy, my yoke is light comes to mind.
Yeah.
And service is really just practical love, is one way I define it.
Yeah. So if you want more,
when you're coming in a transaction, you're saying, how can I love this person and meet them where they're at in my pastoral capacity, and they don't need to know any of that. They'll just feel it.
Just like a realtor or you guys, I tell the Lord, like, I consecrate my relationship with this person to you, Lord. I accept my role in their life. Yeah. And then I just walk with the Lord on what that looks like.
Yeah, that's so good. So good, man. Cool. All right. Well, that's it for this week. We'll catch you next time on Take Your Mountain.